everybody, and welcome to Art of Heart. I'm Marissa Campbell, and today is Thursday. And as we know, good things happen on Thursday. And my guest today is an absolute firecracker of a human and is the go-to in my everyday business world. I can't wait for you to meet her and hear her stories. But before we get started, welcome, Chris, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I'm Chris White. I am an old lady. I'm 64 years old. In fact, just this morning at the gym, I was bragging that I once again took number one gold medal in the senior women's division because I am the only senior in the whole gym. But makes me feel good that way. I live in the little city of West Sacramento, California, which is not Sacramento, and we're very proud of that. We often say best Sac. I have three adult children and one adult grandchild, and one who's well on his way. He's going to get his driver's license in a month and a half.
Chris and I met in my day job. We both work in the clean tech world. And in business, everybody likes to present like they're helpful, but they always have an ulterior motive. And I happened to get plopped into Sacramento several years ago on my journey. And I met a handful of people who, honest to goodness, just helped because it was the right thing to do. They wanted to help. They wanted people who were engaged in their community. And I kept showing up. And somewhere along the way, there was a gentleman named Tim Taylor and Gina O'Neill, and they introduced me to Chris White. And it's such a close knit group of people, but yet they're like the gatekeepers to everything that happens in this region, whether it's Sacramento or West Sac or Yolo County. It's like this conglomeration of really cool things that happens in the clean tech world. And Chris has always been so kind and so open with her time and her knowledge and her willingness to help. And that's just not something that you normally see. And so I put a call out on my LinkedIn. I said, "Hey, I'm sure that people in my network have stories to share." And she said, "I would love to share." So it's really exciting to have you on, and your stories are amazing. So let's start off with story number one. And the title to that story is Opportunity or Rebellion. Tell us more.
I've really thought about how far back do I start? Do I start when the earth was formed? But so to give you like maybe not quite that far back, my first real job when I got out of college, real job, was working for a consulting company whose only client was IBM. For 6 years, I was a spokesperson for IBM and I did new technology introduction. To give you an idea of how new, it was desktop computers that we were trying to get people to use. But over the years that I was there, I worked with a lot of brand new things about who would use them and how would they use them and how do the dominoes have to line up for this to work and take advantage of it, people to take advantage of it. Where do they find the benefit? And I thought I got really good at telling the winners from the losers, and I was wrong sometimes. But I really developed this love of what's new. How do you be first? How can you see something around the corner and be in front of it? And that led me to working from technology to a different technology, technology on wheels. And I went to work for a company that managed the California Fuel Cell Partnership. When I started there, 100% of fuel cell vehicles in America lived in our office building, and all of the hydrogen stations in the world were at our office building. So again, it was doing something really new and figuring out what are the problems and where are the advantages and seeing how change happens. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody this morning, he was talking to, she said she's 30 and how she wanted to be such a change maker and it just seems like nothing happens. And I thought, honey, 64. Uh, you know, changing everything takes a long time and it's a lot of little steps. Well, within this company, I was super happy. They gave me lots of opportunities to try something new and do something new and kind of go out on my own. And it was never without thought. There always needed to be a business plan behind it and how are you going to get there? I really, really enjoyed it and branched out into doing other things too. It wasn't just fuel cells and hydrogen, but how do we help fleets transition into something that's not gas? And as I say to my clients all the time, I don't care if it's orange juice or flux capacitors as long as it's not gas. And how do we do this next thing? And how do we plan this next thing? And how do we think of this next thing? Now, I want to tell you along the way, this wasn't my only job. I met a friend, um, and we bought a bowling alley.
You bought a bowling alley?
So for 17 years, we had a bowling alley in West Sacramento. And now my former partner, his son runs the bowling alley, and I'm more of a mentor role. But Marissa, when you talked about connecting with Tim, oh my God, to be a person who was in marketing and working with technology and cars and to buy a bowling alley, um, if it were not for meeting people along the way and listening to them and learning from them and them meeting, handoff of one to another and saying, well, that's not how building permits work. That's not how you go about doing that. It, I just found that to be so awesome and so valuable. And many of those people that I met back then, Tim Taylor was one of them because I met him bowling when he came in the bowling alley. It just really changed how you build that network. So let's get back to my story where here I am being having so many opportunities and what I was doing with my job. And then the inevitable happened. And Marissa, I think you were too young to remember the book, The Peter Principle.
I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
It was like all the rage when I was either in my late teens or early 20s. But the notion was that you get promoted to your level of incompetence, that
Okay.
people who are doing a good job just keep getting moved up, thinking, but the job changes as you move up. And that's what happened to me. Now, instead of being out there meeting people and solving problems and doing something new, I was sitting behind my desk and doing annual reviews and filling out budget forecasts and setting things, doing the structure and the
Mhm.
organization of something. And Marissa, I sucked at it. I was really bad.
So first of all, I have to tell you, I love the fact that you said that because, like, one of the things I always tell people, one of my superpowers is I can tell you what I'm terrible at. Like, I have a finite number of things I'm really good at, and those things, like, you should double down on me. I'm always your belt bet, and all the other stuff, like, please phone a friend. Like, if we're talking about finance, call somebody else. Like, I don't do math. I'm really pretty, and I think that that's such a important part of whether it's your professional journey or your personal journey, just being able to say like, "Okay, I did this thing. I thought it was gonna be great. I really suck at it. I don't wanna do this anymore. It's not for me." Right? It's that ability to self-actualize is huge.
And the more I floundered at the parts that I wasn't good at, uh, because I had this spreadsheet I had to fill out every week that took me a day to do this spreadsheet where somebody else could have done it in 15 minutes. And they're like, oh no, I just wrote this V lookup thing, this, that, and the other thing. And I don't even know what they're saying to me.
It's like a different language.
Because I'm floundering in this, I had to give up many parts of my job that I really loved. Um,
Mm.
and there was some discussion about, we've promoted you and there are new people in and they need to do these things while you are taking care of the management. Uh, I just felt like this isn't how I wanted to end my career. Now, I had one project that I was really working on too with trucks that I found to be very interesting, and it was doing the thing that I love, talking to people, asking their ideas, asking them for help, having them teach me things, figuring out things on my own, coming back to them with an idea and saying, what about this? Well, one day, as I just started thinking, maybe I'll just retire, or because I'm old enough now, I can draw social security. I'm old enough for Medicare. Maybe I can retire and maybe just be like Tim Taylor and just kind of hang out with the Clean Cities people and talk trucks when I want to and all of these other things. Then I thought, I'm not quite ready to do that yet. So I phoned a friend, um, Wayne Kittleson, who was a person that I had known because we worked together on something minor, and I just picked up the phone to him for years. And I called him and asked him for a job, asked him if he'd give me a job.
That's incredible.
Can you imagine what it's like to be thinking about retirement and then leaving the place that has given you so much opportunity and so much growth and so many so much stuff after 21 years, and to go do something new with new people? So it was a lot of discussion.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's scary. Like there's so many unknowns and that's one of the things in business is like we never know how well in anything. We never know how things are going to turn out, right? Like you make the best decision you can with the information you have at hand and you go full force and you create action until you're like, well, I don't that's not great. Let's try something else, right? But also, I think it's really important to like kind of pause and talk about the fact that most people don't know how to or do reinvent themselves. They would have either shrunk themselves to do something else and stayed in a place that was safer, or they would have felt like defeat and not wanted to try something else. Like the fact that you reinvented yourself is huge.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm doing the same work. It's just in a different place. And uh it wasn't just a clean cutoff either. There was many months of transition as my old employer brought in people and we moved projects along. I continue to work with my old company. I continue to mentor two people who work there. So we we evolved and we moved on.
Mm.
But what I also found is within like 2 days of being here at Kettleson is I don't have to do spreadsheets. Uh, I still have some of those responsibilities, but they found somebody who's really good at it and she helps
Mhm.
me. And I don't have to do that. And they really value the fact that I get out there and talk to people. And in fact, I mentor other folks in the company about how to go talk to strangers and make new friends and do these things, which is awesome. And just so many new opportunities and new things to do. I can't believe that I even thought about retiring.
You know, anytime you are a pioneer in an industry, right, which you've done several times in your career, I equate it to the wild, wild west in that not everything is figured out yet, right? Like you have to be able to critical think and you have to be able to problem solve. You have to be able to use your network and do all these things because there is no like process that has been deployed and is working. Like when you're bringing in, to your point, whether it's flux capacitors or orange juice, it doesn't matter. Like whatever the fuel is, that not everything is proven, not everything is half the time, to be honest with you, in our industry, the OEMs are changing, the products are changing, the hardware is changing. Like there's all these things that are changing. The initiatives are changing, and it's so hard to keep up that you have to be able to talk to people and see what's going on and get a pulse on the community. And without that, none of these other things work.
Absolutely. And if you want to talk about hardware and software that changed all the time, it was PCs, man. I would talk people into spending millions of dollars on PCs only to come in next month and go, oh, that's all obsolete now. Oh, there's a new software upgrade that's going to take you 19 floppy disks to load on all thousand of your computers. So, yeah. Um, Now we have a faster modem. It goes 9600 baud. So, yeah.
It's a constant evolution, and that's technology, and that's, it's somebody had asked me a few months ago, they're like, "Well, what are EVs gonna look like in 2 years?" And I'm like, What can you imagine? Like, what is your wildest dreams?" Because the technology is changing so quickly, and whether it's, like, how the batteries are used or how they're charged or ho it's just almost like limitless possibilities. We're at the infancy of something that is changing so fast. I mean, look at what happened with hydrogen. Like, it's been an interesting journey for hydrogen.
I think so too. And now that I've been doing this for 22 years, I have watched the pendulum swing on the thing that's going to change us all, save us all, I mean. And, in my line of work, it's fuels, but I see that pendulum swing in technology. Right now, AI is going to save us all, except for if you talk to my oldest son, who is a computer security expert, he disagrees with that. Or you look at the type of diet or the food or the exercise or the thing that's going to save us all. And nothing, it takes all of them to do this, and it takes behavior change and thinking about things differently. Um, and every step that we learn and every increment that we make is learning a little bit more just for the next step. It sounds really cliche, but it's about a series of steps, not an end point.
Correct. And I think so much too, like our careers are kind of these natural rivers, right? They kind of ebb and flow. And it's just that same way with technology or whatever's working on, whatever's happening at the moment in the world. And you kind of either have to like get in the river and keep moving, or you get off the river, And it's I just think that we don't spend enough time in business, critical thinking and trying to problem solve and figuring out how to best use our skills and double down on the stuff we're good at and the stuff we're not. Let's find somebody who can do the VLOOKUPs in a quarter of the time because then everybody's happier, right? Everybody, everybody. So tell me a little bit about what your heart looked like as you made this transition from your 21-year job into this new role.
So I want to say this a couple of ways. The first is I had heard a speaker years ago who talked about opportunity knocking. And she said opportunity rarely ever raps at your door. It most likely bangs you upside the head to make you pay attention. And so I do feel a little bit like that happened. Is I needed something to bang me upside the head. And then part of that in the heart part of it was very scary to walk away from the relationships and the processes, and I knew how the shared drive worked there and all of these other things. It was very hard to do it. But once I got out the door and into the new thing, it felt like my heart had been in a really, really, really nice zoo, with a lot of structure that told me what time, people brought me food at what time and what time the lights turned off. And I was released back out into the wild to be the person that I am. And they celebrate the person that I am. And so I feel like I'm running free. But we still have rules and I still follow those.
And you're doing a great job following those rules, I'm sure. But you know what I mean? There's a difference. I so first of all, thank you for sharing. That's really powerful. I think that we sometimes forget that when we're in, even if it's a really great zoo, if there's rules that necessarily don't allow us to be completely ourselves and free, there's something that just isn't for us. And the way I describe when I'm working on Art of Heart and Lead with Heart, I tell people all the time that I feel like when you're playing a video game and when you're on the right track, these things appear like you get an extra life or you get a superpower or like you get, a portal to go into the next place faster. And I feel like when I'm being my full authentic self and when I'm working on the things that I'm so passionate about and I'm so aligned with, the universe gives me gift after gift after gift. And the moment I try and I get kind of out of that alignment or I start to work on something that maybe isn't the best path for me or I'm not fully authentic, I don't get any of those gifts. And it's taken me a really long time to realize that. But I think that part of part of just being fully you and being able to run free, I think you get more of those gifts.
I think so too. And have you ever heard of zone of genius?
I have.
It's a pretty old concept, but one I really love. And that, in case anybody doesn't know, that idea of zone of genius is where your expertise matches the things you're passionate about. And people who really, really thrive and love their jobs, it's because they found that zone of genius. And I feel like I was in it, I got way out of it, and now I'm back in the zone of genius.
And if you think about zone of genius, it's so odd to me when people do things that are really outside of what they're good at and they just continue to beat their head against the wall. And like you meet those people in business and you think, gosh, like, is that fun? Because it can't be. It's miserable for me. Like literally, like I had to sit on a finance call last week and I'm like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Nothing really bad was happening. I wasn't in danger. But sitting on a finance call for an hour and a half, looking at numbers on a spreadsheet and doing forecast, it literally just like my insides like want to fall out and die. Um, so it's just so interesting to me when people haven't kind of aligned with that zone of genius yet, or they haven't figured out like, these are my skills, these are the things I like, and I'm going to put them together and I'm going to go so much faster with so much less effort. It's unbelievable.
For sure. Absolutely.
So your next story, first of all, I love the title. It's My Life as a Bulldozer. And I've also often been accused of being a bulldozer more times than I can probably count. And being too direct. And so I'm really interested for you to share this hard and aha moment with us.
I think that this might have been born from the years I spent standing on a stage talking to people about what new technology they should adopt and why when I was working for IBM. But it somehow developed into a habit of me putting an idea out there and thinking that I was starting a discussion. When in
Mm,
fact, what I learned is I was ending the discussion. I made it sound like I knew everything and I didn't want anything else. So let me tell you how I got here. Again, at the company where I was working, um, my boss worked in a different office. And our office was like this long, skinny hallway. And I worked with a person who worked two desks down from me, and she and I just shouted at each other down the hall. We called it the Flintstone intercom system.
okay.
We were doing this shouting one day, and my boss understood that I was shouting at her down the hall. Like, totally took it out of context. And so not what happened. And I really hate things that are falsely accused. I don't watch TV shows
Mm,
or movies that are about somebody being falsely accused. I don't read a book about it. So to be falsely accused and not be able to convince him that that didn't happen was really hard. He got very um, mean with me and told me if it didn't, the client didn't love me so much, he would fire me right there. Falsely accused. Instead,
oh.
he had me work with a business coach named Carol. And by our second meeting, and when I started this, because I had been falsely confused, my heart was like a brick. I did not want any of this. I didn't need this. I was already really good at working with people, yada, yada, yada. Well, by the second time that Carol and I met, I realized what I was doing with this bulldozer. And I was not opening up discussions. I was not leaving room for other people to speak or to think or to
Mm.
feel. And so over 15 sessions, 15 awesome sessions, and a staff of people that I worked with who were willing to let me practice on them for months, I really learned how to uh, empathize, to listen, to bring people out, to understand what they were really thinking, to make connections instead of trying to be right. My
Mm.
children, the youngest who was still at home as a teenager, they talked about what a difference it was. The people I met out in the world and my friends talked about how different it was. It really changed my life.
So it's really interesting when you have something that changes you so much on the inside and you look the same on the outside, but when you go through this metamorphosis almost to where you have new skills and you see things in a new way, it's when everybody around you starts to notice, isn't it such an interesting like perception that number 1, you probably didn't realize this is exactly what was happening, but number 2, what an impact something like that makes in your life.
Absolutely. And at first, literally, she gave me a structure of talking to people, and I was literally like walking around with cue cards. And I am so blessed to have had these colleagues at my old job that were willing to put up with this and even at some points go, I think you missed one step in there. Uh,
I love it.
and and it took a long time to get to a point too, a long time. You know, I could just say, go do this again instead of saying, would you mind sharing what you're thinking about this and how it and oh, it took a long time, but over a while you get just like any other skill, you know, you can net it down and get a little faster.
Yeah, and you build that muscle. So when you first were accused of something that wasn't true, what did your heart look like?
Brick wall. I mean, I was uh I could even say at that point I felt like my world was crashing down on me. That everybody thought I was a horrible human being and my heart was so dark and sad. And
Yeah.
then came the I'm not going to fire you. I want you to work with this business coach. And when Carol and I first talked, I wanted nothing to do with her. There was not a word she was going to say that was going to get into me. I was just going to be the most obstinate person in the world.
Hmm.
And the second one around, Carol made, she expressed herself by doing hand painting on silk scarves, and they're gorgeous. Watercolors
Wow.
on silk scarves. And I felt like by the end of our second meeting, I felt like my heart had turned into this wavy silk scarf that had all these different colors in it and could morph and change shapes and could be falsely accused and still come out of it a little differently, very much differently.
And still be vibrant and beautiful. I think sometimes there's a misconception that it takes a really long time for our hearts to change. And one of the things I really try to help teach people and share with people is that your heart can change in a moment. Cause like I bet if we looked at what your heart looked like just before the brick wall, it probably was completely different. And then we had a brick wall. And then 2 sessions later, we're this beautiful watercolored silk fabric that's flowing again. And so it doesn't have to be this forever change. Sometimes it's just a moment, a moment, a moment. So it probably went from, a good to a hard to an aha that turned into this beautiful thing.
I think so. And Marissa, just even listening to you say this, I think the other thing that jumps out at that is that silk scarf and that ability to change and ability to be wrong as I did it, that wasn't soft and mushy. That was really strong, maybe stronger than the brick
Yeah.
wall.
Yes. I love that. And it's totally true. I think for me, some of the times when I am the absolute strongest is when things are the most fluid. There's a saying, fragile, not fragile like glass, fragile like a bomb or something. And it's about like the is that what it is? Fragile like I don't know. I'll have to look that up. If you're listening, somebody go Google it and drop it in the comments in the YouTube. But it's the idea of like that metamorphosis and that change, strength often looks so much softer than a brick wall.
Very good way to say that.
So interesting.
So how does your heart feel right now, Marissa?
I have to tell you, when you were sharing with me that you were not interested in change and then you had this beautiful metamorphosis, it makes my heart feel so full and hopeful that for me, even when I'm in hard moments, that there is in an instant can be this beautiful, flowy um, fabric and that's colorful and bright because we forget. And that's, a lot of the purpose of the podcast is because these stories, the stories that make up our human experience, when we're in our daily life and we have our blinders on and we go from meeting to meeting and responsibility and role to meeting to responsibility and role, we don't take a chance to see how we feel and how our lives impact other people and how other people impact our lives. And so I feel very hopeful that, you have had such an incredible career and been absolutely on the cutting edge of all different kinds of technology and really continue to do so, that even if there's hard days in my career, that there's brightness on the other side.
That's a lovely thought to end with.
It is. So before we say goodbye, everybody gets asked this question. If you had one piece of advice to share with listeners, what would it be?
Pay yourself first. Uh, so 10% of your paycheck should go into a savings account that you don't touch. I am working right now with a grandson who got himself in credit card debt because he doesn't do that. So it's right at the top of my mind. Pay yourself first because there's never any money left over after you've paid the bills to put into savings.
That's great advice.
It is, but you and I are both talking about how we don't like financial stuff, and my advice is financial.
Well, it's different when it's that versus corporate stuff, but and, when you think about pay yourself first, it's not, yes, it's financial, but also it's around time, and if you're not investing in yourself and you're not, working on yourself, that you're never gonna come first.
Very true. That's why I carve out gym time every morning, or people who my colleague Matt goes for a walk every day. He has to pay himself first, too.
Yep, pay yourself first. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, I truly appreciate it, and, I'll see you guys next week.